Many companies today use behavioral assessment tests to determine your suitability for employment. We talked about resumes, we talked about cover letters, we talked about preparing for the interview, but many companies today, there's just a few behind us, that actually use these tests as part of their application process. These tests are important in you getting that interview. I'm going to try to describe to you what a behavioral assessment test is, how to prepare to take that test, and the purpose behind that test. The resume talks about you as a person as far as your training, your experience, maybe some classes that you took, a job here and there. So it gives the employer information about you and your background. Your cover letter also describes certain traits, assets that you think are important. But the employer wants more. See, the employer wants a person who's competent, can do a good job, has good experience, but an employer today is looking for someone that has character and integrity. How do they determine that? Well, they determine that through these behavioral assessment tests. Behavioral assessment test is going to ask you a series of questions about your judgment, about your decision making. They're going to talk about decisions you would make in the workplace, decisions you may make at home. But they're really looking at you as a person, how you think, and how you're going to be representative of the company. So it's important to understand the purpose of these tests in order to get a true picture as to how to answer the questions. Let me give you an example. Let's say that you're going to hire a plumber or a carpenter at your house to do some work. You surely want to get someone that's going to be competent, just wants to know about plumbing, wants to know about carpentry, about the particular project that you're going to hire that person for. But you may not be home all the time. They're going to be exposed to your house, to your family, your possessions. So in addition to his competency, you want someone that's trustworthy. You want someone that you're not going to feel bad about not being there, or that's going to be a reflection on you. Maybe they'll see your neighbors and you want them to treat them properly. Well, this is what the behavioral assessment test is used for by the employer with regard to you, the applicant applying for the job. Many times you'll go into large stores like a Lowe's or a Target, a Home Depot, and they'll say, our application's online. And when you get online and you start filling out the application, and they're going to ask you the normal name, rank, and serial number information, school, history, then they give you this test. The assessment test is usually about 65 to 75 questions, multiple choice. And they usually ask you questions so that you can answer either that you agree, you disagree, strongly agree. You have to make this selection. You must be careful when you read these questions. You must understand what the employer is trying to find out. Just like I told you, you want to find out about the integrity and trustworthiness of that carpenter or plumber. They're trying to find out the same thing. So if you think about what it is your answer reflects, it will help you in making that right choice. Now, secondly, the employer many times in these tests will ask the same question 2 or 3 times using different words and maybe different examples, but they're testing the same character trait. They're testing the same decision-making process. You must read the question very, very carefully. Take your time to understand the question and what is really being asked of you. Do not rush. Do not just select something for the purpose of getting done with the test. Because I can tell you for a fact that if you do not pass this assessment test, no matter what your resume says, the likelihood is you will not be called for an interview. Further example about a guy that came in and took my class, Gateway to Work program. He had taken these assessment tests about 4 or 5 times before he actually came to the class. Every single time, he never got called by Home Depot for an interview. When he came in and took the class, we actually sat down together and went through the test question by question. Now, he knew the answers, but he didn't understand the question. And when I was with him and we looked at the questions, I asked him to think about it and take his time. He successfully completed the test and within 1 day received a return phone call. An interview was scheduled. He presented his resume. He went to the interview and got a job. Now, there was no magic to this. It was just paying attention, taking the time to understand the question. So that's what I want you to do. When you get faced with one of these tests, take the time and read the question and understand what the employer is looking for. Now, these tests are going to be testing certain, character traits. Give you an example of a couple questions to think about. You're working in a store and there are 2 other employees that are having an argument. One of them is from your department and one of them is from another department. What do? You'll be given choices. Do you do nothing? Do you contact a supervisor? Do you go over and try to intercede? Or do you call, another manager? What do you do? Well, stop and think about the consequences of each of those answers. The company, the store, doesn't want any commotion in the store. They don't want someone that is going to get involved with taking sides and putting themselves in a bad position to work there. They usually are looking for a team player, but they also want to keep peace in the environment. You got to think through what you would do and what would be best for the company. A person is coming in continually late. How do you handle that? Do you say nothing? You realize that the other employees in his department are really getting upset because they got to take over for the work that he's not doing. Do you say something to him that everyone else is upset? Do you wait until you get into a department meeting and then say something in front of everybody? What do you do? This is a typical question that's going to be asked. Stop and think of the consequences again, okay? You want to be forthright, you want to be a team player, but you also got to think of the company. Lastly, customer calls with a complaint. You pick up the telephone and the customer says, "This is the 3rd time that I've called the store in the last 2 days. The last 2 times I called, I was put on hold. No one ever came back to talk to me. The time after that, someone said they were going to try to answer my problem, and they never called me back." What do you do now? Do you tell that person, "Let me get the last person you talked to. Do you remember that person's name?" Do you say, "Hold on, let me get a manager"? Do you say, "Give me your number and I'll see if I can get someone else to help you"? Or do you say, "Tell me your problem and let's see if we can solve it together"? Now, obviously that's a good choice. You don't want to look for the person because they had a bad experience with that person. Try to solve the problem. Try to get a happy customer. So these are the typical questions that you're going to be asked, okay? And it's important to really listen to what it is the question is asking you, okay? So in addition to just presenting a resume, be prepared to take these tests, okay? And then think of putting yourself in the same position of an employer. What would you look for? Who do you want to work for you? That's what they're trying to find out. So it's no longer just a situation of experience, because you see, you may not have a certain experience, but employers can teach you procedure. They can teach you how to do certain things or tasks at work, and they can overcome certain lack that you may have in that particular experience. We can transfer skills from other jobs, from other situations that you have. And the employer can teach you what he wants you to do, but he can't teach you character, honesty, and trustworthiness. That's what you have to bring to the table. That's what I want you to realize the behavioral assessment test is doing. Testing your character, trustworthiness, and behavior. If you exemplify those positive traits, you'll have a good chance in getting that interview.